Dawson's Rambles.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my second Halloween special ranking episode. The first one I did a top 5 ranking of my favorite Halloween specials, and because none of the clip shows made it into that list, and I rewatched them anyway, I thought it might be fun to rank the clip shows. I mean, they're specials, but most of them at least have some sort of an aspect of a clip show to them that we've been doing from Samurai through present, so I decided to rank them. And I want to say right off the bat, rewatching these, some of them actually weren't as bad as I remember, and also, honestly, most of them have a pretty good and fun premise, some more creative than others, for a Halloween special, and some of them don't even use that many clips, and it left me wondering, why don't you just remove that and make it a normal episode? And they would honestly be fun episodes to revisit around Halloween. I'll probably mention something like that from time to time during this video. So coming in at the bottom, and this isn't because I have a raging hate on for Megaforce like most of the fandom, but is Raising Spirits from Megaforce. Like, I didn't think this episode was awful, but I just found the general premise to be the least interesting and the least fun for me, because it's basically the Rangers just going to a fortune teller, and the fortune teller is like, oh, I'm reading stuff about your histories, I have to do the Power Rangers, why is that? And it's got some semi-decent Halloween vibes. There was actually some funny moments in there, like when Troy fell asleep. It was a little bit over the top, but I found it was funny. And I feel like this was one of the episodes where the actors actually came off the most natural, as I feel like they were having fun. And like, I don't hate this episode, but it just felt like one of the most generic ones in terms of premise and the way the clips were handled. Coming up next is Grave Robber from Ninja Steel. This one actually isn't too bad. I kind of dug it. There was just other ones I like more on this. Like, you have the premise of them playing this, like, Halloween card game or board game, and then they end up having to, at each like place they land on, refight a monster they already fought in a different way. And it wasn't that bad of a premise for like sort of clip show where they ended up tackling situations from a different aspect, so it made it a little bit less like a normal clip show, which was kind of cool. And I liked the concept of the board game and stuff like that. I actually thought this one wasn't bad. It's just, like I said, there was other ones that I liked more. Coming up next after that is Trick or Trial from Power Rangers Dino Super Charge. And this one I thought was fine. I think I liked, obviously, because it hasn't showed up on the list yet, but I liked the other Dino Charge special more. And it introduced the Council of Halloween, which wound up being kind of a reoccurring thing, which I didn't think was a terrible idea or a terrible device for this. And there was some sort of fun aspects of it, and it was kind of cool to see Philip and Tyler's dad show up at the end, and mainly because Tyler's like, Dad! Of course he did. And it wasn't a bad clip show, I just thought it was also kind of average. I think this and Grave Robbers kind of sit along the same line for me of them being like, yeah, you know, it's a decent-ish Halloween clip show. Coming up after that is Monster Mix-Up from Super Ninja Steel, or Ninja Super Steel. It was Super Ninja Steel. And this was also a Council of Halloween episode, but I thought it was a little bit more fun of an episode for a couple reasons. But before I talk about that, I do have to talk about the weirdest part of this episode was that the Rangers were going trick-or-treating at their age. Like, I'm never one to shame people for liking stuff as they get older. I have a Power Rangers channel. But that was just creepy, especially with the way they look, and they have these little tiny jack-o'-lanterns. Like, at least get a normal size candy bag, man. So it was weird that they were going trick-or-treating, and I think it made it even weirder because I marathoned all these Halloween episodes over a couple days, and then you have like the mmpr teenagers volunteering or helping kids trick-or-treat, which made more sense. But this one, like, let's go trick-or-treating. I'm like, let's call the cops. Setting that aside, this episode actually had a fun premise on a couple different levels. The idea of switching places with monsters made for some fun bits, especially with the ones that didn't get captured by the council, and getting some funny interactions with Mick. And then on the council, you have the actors pretending to be the monsters, and they had the voiceovers, but the actors were clearly having fun with it, which was entertaining to watch. And I liked the idea of, instead of a lot of clips we'd seen before, they used clips from more obscure Ninja footage we hadn't seen before. And the reason it was being used was because, like, the monsters obviously didn't know the real stories. They were giving testimony about the Rangers' actions and the monsters' actions, but they didn't know the real stories. So they just made stuff up that sounded ridiculous, but it just happened to be Sentai footage. And I thought that was entertaining, along with the monster swap, and having a clip show with clips that you haven't seen before also reminded me of the Community episode where they did that. So despite me being pretty sour on Ninja Steel overall, honestly both their Halloween specials are pretty okay. After that is Hypnotic Halloween from Beast Morphers. This was a pretty fun episode. It's kind of one of those classic premises where the characters get turned into the costumes they're wearing, which happened because they watched a broadcast from Scrozzle. And you also had, oddly enough, there was a bit in the Overdrive, Ronnie on Empty, where Will didn't like Halloween and Devin didn't like it either, and he also has to learn to like it through this episode. But it had a fun premise with the Rangers acting like their costumes. Again, the actors were having fun with it. I think there were some funny bits with it. I liked the idea that Devin had to play different characters to sort of get through to them. And this one used kind of minimal clips because they really only used about one-ish to bring the Rangers back to their personalities. But this was one of them where I felt they could have just not done any clip show elements and made it a pretty decent Halloween special. Like, because the clips weren't that intrusive, it's not a big deal, but it made me wonder why, with some of these where there was minimal clips, they didn't just remove them all together and just make it a normal Halloween special. Because honestly, I think it would have been more fun rather than, hey, remember this, and then doing a flashback. It could have been more funny and interesting to see Devin try to get, like, Viking Zoe and Detective Ravi do something that real Ravi and real Zoe would do to jog their memory and try to engineer a situation where they would act like themselves. That could have led to some more funny humor for the Halloween special rather than just a clip show. After that is Ghostest with the Mostest from Dino Charge. This is another one that I think they could have somehow worked around and not done clips, and it just could have been a normal episode because basically they all show up wearing the same costume, and as a result one of them gets kidnapped and they try to replace them, and then they have to figure out who got replaced by the villains, which leads to the clip show elements. But a lot about it had a good Halloween atmosphere, I thought, and I thought there were some fun character moments in it. And even though I think they could have also engineered a way to not use the clips, I did like that within the flashbacks, they brought in some stuff about the characters, like Shelby's crush on Tyler was like a plot point, so they brought that into her test. And then the fact that Kendall sussed it out because of Coda not calling her Miss Morgan, or calling her Miss Morgan rather than Kendall. So I thought it was just an enjoyable one. Now it's going to be weird because for me, despite these being the early ones, the two Samurai ones wound up being my top two. Maybe if I ever revisit this, these will change, but I liked these two the most. And number two is Trickster Treat, which is a really weird one. And I think there are some objectively better episodes, and I could see why people might like some of the episodes better. But what I ended up liking about this one upon revisiting it is I liked how it was kind of creative, where it used some of the more obscure Shinkenger footage they had and explained it as this monster trying to trap the Rangers in a dream. And it wasn't really a clip show like the normal ones in a lot of ways. So I kind of like that, and watching this now after all these years and after being so bitter on it, it actually wasn't that bad, and I was pretty entertained by it, and I thought it was a clever idea. And I think the ridiculous, almost hobbled together nature of it is what made it entertaining for me. Number one for me is not the one I expected to be number one when I started this list. Number one, Party Monsters, which was the very first one from Samurai, and it's almost the most clip showy of them all. And I think that it has the most intrusive clips. I guess the most clips used of most of them, in my opinion. I just use the word most a lot, and I apologize. But it uses the most clips out of a lot of the ones when you compare it. But I liked the premise of this one, like going back and setting aside the amount of clips they used, it had the funnest Halloween vibe for me for some reason. I think mainly because the premise of an underworld Halloween party felt very early Saban era. Like, there was a bit of nostalgic watching the mmpr specials when I ran through this rewatch, and the whole idea of that very much gave me those vibes, and I kind of dug that. And also, when I stopped being so annoyed at the idea of a clip show, there's some really funny, stupid, cheesy monster dialogue and puns, which I just found to actually be kind of entertaining. Like, who knows, maybe my opinion on this will change later, but I had kind of, again, setting aside the clips, I had the most fun rewatching this because I think it had a fun premise. But that is it for this one, guys. Let me know in the comments, as always, what your favorite ones are. What were your favorite clip shows of this last era? Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can catch us for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.